Welcome to In the Cool of the Day, and I'm your host, Dr. Sharon Stiles Anderson, and this is your segment from Behind the Podium, Conversations about Law and Faith. Today our topic of discussion is the children's immigration issue. Is it a political issue, a legal issue, or a moral issue? And with us today, we have a very profound and prolific friend of mine, an attorney extraordinaire by the name of Samuel Delgado. Good afternoon, Samuel.
Hi, Sharon. How are you? It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Mr. Delgado is an attorney in the DMV area, and I'll read a little bit of his background. He's been a criminal defense attorney and teacher of law in the Washington, D.C. and nationwide and throughout Latin America for over 33 years. Currently, Samuel maintains a private practice as a sole practitioner, the offices of Samuel Delgado, LLC, with offices in Rockville and Hyattsville, Maryland. He is the co-owner and partner of Delgado Pichavar Attorneys, and more recently, he created Delgado Toliento Capacitadores en Destrezas de Litigación Oral in Mexico City, Mexico, to provide training and trial advocacy to attorneys, judges, and law students in Latin America. But for me, he was my mentor, and the reason why I am a lawyer today is because of Samuel, and I could not think of a better person to come and discuss this issue with me today.
Well, thank you, Sharon. This is great.
So, Samuel, this children's immigration issue, political, legal, or moral? And let's first talk about the political implications. What are your thoughts?
Well, politically, I think it's a shame. It breaks my heart to see the photos, the videos of these children who have endured these journeys through the deserts by the coyotes who have brought them here and others, the dangerous trip, and why they've come here and how it's turned into a political issue. This is not a political issue in my mind, but certainly with bipartisan politics here in Washington, D.C., it's taken over, and it's going to be a big issue in the elections.
Sure. Now, I was reading up on it, and I read the statistics. Over 52,000 unaccompanied children immigrants coming into the United States illegally, and that's just within this year. What are your thoughts about that number? I mean, if I'm a citizen and I'm a taxpayer, I'm saying, wow, we have children in the United States that are impoverished. We have poverty issues in our own borders. How do we handle 52,000 children coming across? What do I say as a politician? What's the response?
As a politician, I think what you have to say and what we have to be as Christians and what we have to say as believers and people of faith, and it's this country was made up of immigrants. And if that inscription on the Statue of Liberty, give us your poor huddled masses, means anything, I don't think it does today when you hear people talking about send them back, deport them, what have you. But that's how we were built. And I think as people of faith, I think as attorneys, I think as legislators, I think as people within the community, what we have to do is open our arms, open our hearts, and say, this is a humanitarian issue. Stop the politics. We have to help these folks. And as far as our own poor and our own impoverished, sure, we've got issues here that have to be taken care of. But this is a great nation, so we say. And if it is a great nation, it is, and I believe it is, then we've got to wrap our arms around this issue, wrap our arms around these children, and we've got to save them. We've got to protect them.
Right. Now, I also heard and read, I mean, toddlers. One of the youngest that a Christian organization interviewed in the Texas facility that they are using as a holding place, so to speak, 7 years old. 7 years old coming across the border. So, you know, we hear taxpayers say, well, why should my taxpayers' dollars go towards feeding and clothing and the medical attention that these children need? You know, what do you say to a taxpayer who says, now I've got my own kids, have my own tax problems, you know, why should I be responsible for taking care of a 7-year-old that's not even legally within this country? What do we say?
Absolutely. What we say to the taxpayer is think about all the great immigrants who have come to this country and done great things. My mother came to this country picking fruit, and she had a pretty great family, my present company excluded perhaps, but sure enough, people have come to this country and built this country. They've been the greatest minds who have come here, and we've come together. The taxpayers, we have to eat it sometimes. You know, we have to spread around the wealth. And I'm not wealthy, and most of us aren't wealthy. But you know, when we pay our taxes, we know what it's about, and we have to help these people. Right. We have to help these children. You say 7 years old. I've seen many younger coming across the borders with and without parents. And what do? You send them back to what?
Right. So the arguments that I've heard is strain on the economy. Clearly, you know, in a political environment, we have the Republicans saying one thing and the Democrats saying another, and then we have the tax implications. And I think what was interesting for me when I looked at even the political legal issue was that when right before Bush left office, he created the William Wilberforce Trafficking Protection Victims Act, right. and that was to protect the children. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How that legal implication addresses the issue?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we have Congress. That's why we have an executive branch. That's why we have a judicial branch, and that is you create laws. I mean, law is not static. You have to adapt to the situation at hand, and that's what Bush did in 2012. President Bush did in 2012, and that is to protect those children who were coming over, who was being trafficked in a sex trade and things of that sort. This situation is somewhat akin to that. It's worse in many different ways. These children have endured torture, poverty and hunger in their countries.
Right.
Honduras is a country now that has the highest murder rate in the world, and this is where the people are coming from. They're fleeing out of fear and out of poverty, out of economic crisis, and we've got to do something about it.
That's right. And then President Obama recently passed an act as well, is my understanding, where anybody that came over across the border that's under 16, their deportation is suspended indefinitely.
Absolutely.
To be able to address some of the issues. Is that right?
Absolutely. And that's what has to be done. And that's why we have executive orders. That's why President Obama can do that. And that's why we have a Congress. And just like that, the DREAM Act, I mean, that was put together and that was enacted. Why? Because there was a recognition. We have people in this country who have come here and perhaps they're without documents, but the possibility is that they're going to be great people. Right. They're going to build this country with us. And that's what the DREAM Act was all about.
That's right.
So legislation and executive order, whatever needs to be done has to be done to take these children, these are babies, to take them out of these detention facilities.
That's right.
That's what they are. They're jails. They're detention facilities. And if you look at the film, the footage out there, I mean, you're talking about concertina wire coming around it. You've got guards, and they're prohibiting people from entering and going. And it's the faith-based groups that are out there watching and are vigilant about what's happening within those facilities, and that's what we need.
Yes, I was reading a Christian organization, Southern Baptist Convention. A lot of the churches down in Texas have gone in to talk to the children to make sure that they were being treated fairly, because what struck my heart was this is like a concentration camp.
Sure.
You know, this is like a concentration camp.
Yeah.
I'd rather see them placed with families, you know, as opposed to in a detention facility, which makes them feel like criminals.
Absolutely.
Because they're not fleeing because they committed a crime.
Right.
They're fleeing because of the crime situation in the country that they're leaving, right?
Absolutely.
Right. You mentioned it, you know, the Honduras, we
Guatemala,
have,
and El Salvador.
Right.
Yeah.
The three countries that have the highest crime rates in the Latin American area. Yeah. So fleeing crime, fleeing drugs and the drug wars. I even read an article where they said that part of the situation in these countries was created by what the United States was doing in combating the drug war. So it's so volatile now that they have no other place to go.
Absolutely.
Right. And then human trafficking. I think I told you my last show was addressing the human trafficking issue, and a lot of the victims for human trafficking come from these countries when we're talking about cross-border human trafficking.
Sure.
So what I think I hear from you, and I, because I know you, I know your heart, and it's like mine, this is not a political issue, it's not a legal issue, it's a humanitarian issue.
That's right. And legally, something has to be done. Legislation has to be passed to take care of this. Money has to be provided. And yeah, we have to tighten our belts a little bit. We have to take it a little bit. And you know what? We'll get something in return in the end, and we'll be taken care of. And here's... We shouldn't be waiting for something in return, though I think that's generally how we are, but we should just be grateful that we have an opportunity to do something great.
That's right.
And that is to come into the lives of these poor little children, these babies who have come over here out of fear, and to do something for them. That should be the reward. That's the reward for me, I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I'm a pastor, and so, you know, for me, I look at the scriptures that say Jesus is a refuge. You know, the church is a refuge. So we should be a refuge, because that's why they're coming.
Absolutely.
They're coming for safety. You know, where is the compassion in the crisis was the question that I asked.
Exactly.
You know, where is it? You know, if we just look at it as a purely political issue, there's no compassion in the crisis. If we look at it as a legal issue, then there's no compassion in the crisis. But if we look at it as a humanitarian issue, then we find the compassion.
We do. And what we do, and it dovetails, because in these Latin American countries, the church is the base of the community.
Yes.
Okay, these are believers.
That's a good point.
And they're coming over here, and they know the church will save them.
That's
they know the church will protect them.
That's right.
The church is a sanctuary.
That's right.
And so it's good when I did a little research and I was reading up and I saw faith-based groups all over the map who are doing things for this, to intervene, and so it's good to know that.
That's right. That's right. And again, you know, the church really should be the focal point of this, because that's the only way we can keep it a humanitarian issue, is what I think. And I also was reading an article, and one of the pastors said, you know, we're all created in God's image. So if we treat them any differently, if we treat them like an issue, as opposed to like people, that's someone's child.
Absolutely.
That's someone's grandchild. It's not just an issue. They're not an issue. They're people who are looking for refuge and looking for support and looking for care.
Absolutely.
And that's what we should do.
Yeah, I mean, what the politicians are doing, they're turning it into a political issue, and what they're doing is they're likening it to in general, I don't use the term illegal alien, because people, we're not aliens, and people aren't illegal, conduct is. But they're saying that undocumented persons, we're very familiar with that issue, and you know, the back and forth on that, but this is not the same issue.
That's right.
And they're trying to pull it in as if it were.
That's right. So we're going to take a break, but we have more to come with Mr. Delgado. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Being a gold medalist skier requires a lot of hard work, intense training, and time outside on the mountain. But taking care of my skin is easy and doesn't affect my performance. Every day I apply sunscreen and wear protective gear. I know protecting my skin will help prevent skin cancer and avoid wrinkles. I get my skin checked regularly by a dermatologist. 1 in 5 Americans will develop some form of skin cancer in their lifetime. My name is Julia Mancuso, and I'm wearing orange to help put a spotlight on skin cancer.
Welcome back to In the Cool of the Day. Again, I'm your host, Sharon Anderson, and we're here with Samuel Delgado, and we're talking about the children's immigration issue, political, legal, or humanitarian. So, Samuel, you were talking before we broke about how, you know, the church is the center of this and why the church should be the center of this. Tell me a little bit more about the role you think faith-based organizations should play.
Yeah, because in Latin America, the church plays such a central role in the life of the family, and it's we have family-oriented culture. The church is really the center of the community, such that when these folks are fleeing from these countries, from the fear and from the poverty and from the violence, it's primarily the violence they're fleeing from, they're looking for those places that are familiar to them. And what's familiar to them is someone with a collar on, or someone with or a building with a steeple, and that's where they want to be. That's where they want to go. And it's the churches, it's the organizations that need to jump in right now, and they're doing all that, and I'm happy to see it. Someone's got to jump in, and that's what's happening now.
That's a good point, and I never really thought about that. I mean, all of these countries are primarily Christian communities.
Absolutely.
And so when the children are looking for safety, I mean, there's safety in shelter, but given the type of shelter that's being offered, I can imagine that it's just, you know, they're just afraid.
Absolutely.
And
even in their home countries, that's
right.
where you go. You go to the
Right.
church for
Sure,
shelter.
sure. And you go to the pastor
Absolutely.
for support. So having churches go in and pray with them and minister to them. Again, I was reading an article by the Southern Baptist Convention, and they said that they're going in and praying and offering them Christ for those who aren't saved, or even if they may have been christened when they were young, they don't know about salvation, and so they don't know about their hope in Jesus Christ. So they're providing that to them, even if they don't stay. You know, there's hope and there's covering and there's refuge in Him, and teaching them of that to give them hope in the totality of the situation.
I mean, you can imagine, I can only say in my own personal life that in those times when things just seem so bad and I feel so alone, I never am, because I have Jesus Christ in my heart.
That's right.
And so when these groups go in, when these children, these people are so desperate and there's no hope, it seems that there's no hope.
Right.
They've got God, they've
That's
got their God there, but to see a representative and say, that's right, we need to pray together. Let's pray.
Right. That's right.
That's what's getting them through it.
That's right.
It's
That's
a horrible thing they're going through right now.
Because, you know, I'm sure that there's flies on the walls that they hear that, you know, are condemning it and condemning them, you know, even if it's not meant to be. You can't help but hear that noise. And so to quiet the noise and have someone help them
they know that their future is uncertain.
Right.
They know that every day. And so that's a fearful thing. And so what I've learned, and they're learning through the church and the groups, is that you take that fear, you turn it on its head, and you got faith.
That's right.
And that's how they're going to get through it, thanks to the church
That's
and other groups like that.
Amen. Amen. Let's talk a minute about Samuel. Let's talk about Samuel. Known you for so long. You know, my fondest memory, I have to say it, is I graduated from Georgetown. As you know, you're a Georgetown Law graduate, and I was sitting in my first criminal procedure review class for an exam, and in walks Samuel Delgado, and he took a subject that, you know, is very, very difficult and explained it in such excruciatingly simple detail that I aced the exam. And it transformed my belief in what I wanted to do as a lawyer, because I thought I was going to be an international lawyer, but that moment and that experience with you and the passion that you had for representing indigents accused of crimes made me want to be a public defender, and my life has never been the same. And so publicly I thank you for what you did for me and my career. Oh my
goodness, thank you for saying so. And you see, and that's what we did, and what we learned together is what we did was God's work.
Yes.
We did God's work because these people were the people who society turns their back on and just throws them away into this concrete garbage can they call a jail.
That's right.
And so we were able to do that together, and that was a great opportunity.
It was.
I do remember.
Tried a couple of cases together.
Oh,
Tried my first felony one case with
Absolutely.
you. Yes. And I think, again, what struck me as an attorney in, you know, an institution, because law schools in a sense are institution, was to see someone come in and really have a heart for what they were doing. And I had always wanted to be a person that had a heart for what I was doing. And while I wanted to do international law and travel,
law school can take your heart away.
They can.
You know, lots of people going without it, but it can take your heart away. And you know, to this day, and as you said, I'm teaching in Latin America. I'm doing a lot of teaching and training lawyers and judges and law students down there. And it's the same thing that perhaps I shared with you on that day in that auditorium, the moot courtroom at Georgetown. And there are two things that are essential to being a great lawyer, and it's passion and compassion.
That's right. That's right.
Got to have that. Got to be smart, got to work hard, got to do all your homework, but without the passion and the compassion. So I'm teaching folks down there to do what we do.
Amen.
What most people don't know is that there are 19 countries on the planet that speak Spanish primarily, and 14 of those countries have adopted our system, our criminal justice system. And have, in fact, you know, most of Latin America has followed what's called an inquisitorial system, and now they're adopting what they call an accusatorial system. The inquisitorial system is just what it sounds like, the Inquisition, and it dates back to the 1300s, and the Catholic Church is who made that law, and this is how they had trials. And the Inquisition was very secretive, and in Latin America, the judges would actually investigate and direct the investigations, and wouldn't even have, the defendant never had access to any of this, and the prosecutor and the judge would work together until they charge.
Now, did they get a lawyer when they're charged? Did they
when they're
have counsel?
charged, that's right, when they're charged. But even at that point, they don't know what the judge already knows, and they're questioned about it. And in the Inquisition, the emphasis was on the confession, getting a confession. And the one thing that's changed in these systems since the 1800s is that there's no torture allowed. There's very subtle torture, of course, by police, and sometimes not so subtle. But the beauty is this, that there's a world out there that speaks Spanish, and they want a better system of justice. And because I teach with you up at Harvard, I've been doing it, teaching in English for 30-some years with you and others around the country. I'm teaching in Spanish now.
Oh, wonderful.
And I have taught over 4,000 or 5,000 people already in the last 3 years, and it's opening up. And that's why I had to open this company down in Mexico City.
So, and tell us a little bit about that. Did I pronounce it right?
You did a good job on that. Delgado Tolentino Capacitadores was set up because some of my students in the past years who are lawyers and now professors in Mexico and Latin America are organizing more conferences for me. And I really don't have to do anything. And so they said, why don't we set up this enterprise and we'll do all the organization, and you just fly in with your USB port and your PowerPoint and lecture, and so that's what I do.
That's great.
And so it facilitates that.
That's wonderful to hear, because again, I know what an inspiration you are for me. And then up at Harvard, you teach with me, and I see what an inspiration you are to the students there, and it's just fabulous. It's fabulous.
Well, I have to say, it's kind of funny because in Latin America, it's very staunch, very tight, and it always has been. And so now, and all the lecturers from all over Latin America get up and they read to the students. And when I got up the first time 3 years ago, I said, move the furniture. Move the furniture.
I'm sure.
And they saw something. They saw a passion. They saw the passion and the compassion for the client that we have for these desperate people who must be helped, must be saved. And sure enough, these people are coming up, and I think I'm creating a bunch of little monsters down there.
A bunch of little
they're all up there, and they're saying, this is how you be a criminal defense lawyer, And so I say, be yourself, but steal from me and everyone else.
I have.
I have, and I've stolen from you. And just be the very best you can be.
That's right, be the best you can be.
Believe in yourself, believe in God, and believe in your client.
That's right. And I think people, when they think about criminal law and they think of what we do as defense attorneys, probably because of TV, we're always trying to get over, we're always, and I think what they forget, just back to our primary issue, is that our clients are people.
Absolutely.
And so they have mothers, they have fathers, or they're a father, or they're a mother, or they're a child. And it's not to give credence to the act, but because they're people, we have to treat them like we would want one of our family members treated, or like we would want to be treated in that situation. And so we'd want somebody to represent us with compassion. We'd want somebody to represent us to the best of their ability, and to have the heart, not just have a desire to be a good lawyer, but to have the heart for the profession.
And if it means anything, these things that are written on buildings, stuff like equal justice for all, please, please.
That's right.
If that's what it is, well then let's do it. And everyone, we don't condone the acts or conducts of people who do bad things, but we don't condone people being railroaded without counsel and without due process and fair trials.
That's right. And effective representation.
I mean, who was the first defendant who went pro se in a big trial? Jesus Christ.
That's it.
Right? Pro se.
That's pro se.
No counsel there. What happened?
That's right.
Bad result.
Bad result. But in 3 days.
But in 3 days he rose again. Yes, he did. That's right.
Amen.
That's why we're
That
here.
was the appellate process.
Reversed on appeal. He's back.
That's right. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. But it's wonderful to have you, and to expose the listeners to such a great mind and such a great person.
So kind.
On such a great issue, because it breaks my heart to think that a youth child, you know, could be fleeing from an impoverished or a drug-ridden area and then really not feel welcomed or safe.
Yeah.
You know, even if he didn't feel welcomed, even if he was confused or didn't have hope, we would want these youth to feel safe, because if it was my child, I'd want them to
I
feel
want
safe.
everyone listening right now to think about this and to tell it to a friend. Think about that child you love. We all have nieces and
Right.
nephews, and we have our own children and things of that sort, or grandchildren. Think of that baby you love so much, and the joy as you watch. And think about that child being placed in a concrete box called a detention center, surrounded by concertina wire.
Right,
Think
right.
about that.
Right.
Think about your own children.
That's right.
And ask yourself, would I sustain that? Would I support that?
Right.
And the answer, of course, is no. Well, these are our children. They're children of God.
That's right.
They're all our children. We're
That's
brothers
right.
and sisters in God.
That's right.
And so they're our children too.
Yes.
And we have to do something.
That's right. That's right.
And stop the politics.
That's right. That's right. Well, we hope that you enjoyed our show, Samuel. Thank you so much. Quick, give our listeners your phone number if they need legal counsel, and
Anytime.
your email.
Yes, absolutely. 410-262-4529, and my email, samuel@samueldelgadolaw.com. Just give me a call. Anything you need, I'll help you out.
Great lawyer, great friend, great person. And remember, whenever you have a chance, watch In the Cool of the Day from Behind the Podium, conversations about law and faith. God bless.